Blackstone Cherry, known as the biggest Kentucky rock band of this generation, has accomplished a lot over their 20-year career. From playing small clubs and local gigs to selling out Wembley Stadium 7 studio albums later. This is the story of Blackstone Cherry. In 1989, Chris Robertson and John Fred Young met in the Metcalfe County Elementary School and remained best friends throughout their time in school. In 1995, Chris watched John Fred play drums at the 7th grade talent show and decided then and there that he wanted to learn guitar and form a band. Chris's grandfather then gifted him a handmade acoustic guitar that he tried to learn on, but ultimately found it too difficult and gave up. 3 years later, in 1998, Chris decided he wanted to try again, but this time with an electric guitar. For his 13th birthday, he was given an Epiphone Telecaster coupled with a GX30 crate amp. Chris and John Fred continued to jam together throughout this time, slowly honing their skills and meeting new musicians along the way. Eventually, they met bass player John LaHan, who was originally a guitar player. After learning the bass from Chris, the three guys continued to play together regularly. Finally, on June 3, 2001, the three were jamming with other local musicians in the practice house that had been used by the Kentucky Headhunters since 1968. It was there that they met guitarist Ben Wells, who would go on to introduce the group to drop D tuning. The following day, on Chris's 16th birthday, the band Blackstone Cherry was officially formed. It has been the same four guys ever since. Following their official formation, the group continued to practice and write material as often as they could. 2 years later, while the band was still in high school, they released their first official album titled Rock and Roll Tape, under their own independent label, Blackstone Cherry Records. The album was co-produced by Kentucky Headhunters guitarist Richard Young, John Fred's dad, and David Barrett. Following the release of the album, the band would decide to drop out of school and pursue music full-time and continue to play small venues across Kentucky. The band's self-titled debut album was released on July 18, 2006 by Roadrunner Records. The album was once again produced by Richard Young and David Barrett in Glasgow, Kentucky. Following the recording of the record, the band was welcomed back home to Edmonton by the entire town and performed a homecoming gig in their middle school gym. This preceded the band's first time touring overseas, with a UK tour headlining small clubs like the Astoria in London. In 2007, the band would go on to release their first live album, Blackstone Cherry, live at the Astoria, which was limited to 1,000 copies. The band continued to tour and write material and released their sophomore album, Folklore and Superstition, on August 19, 2008. This time produced in Nashville by Bob Marlett and Richard Young. Following this release, the band would go on to do their first ever European stadium tour, opening for Lynyrd Skynyrd and Whitesnake. The band's third album, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, is by far their most popular album, holding two of their most beloved songs, White Trash Millionaire and Blame It on the Boom Boom. This would also be the album they would release the song Stay, most known for being covered by the band Florida Georgia Line. The album was recorded at Bay 7 Studios in Los Angeles and produced by Howard Benson. In late May 2011, following a quick press tour in Germany, Chris Robertson would leave his house with his grandfather's shotgun with the intent to commit suicide. However, something caused him to stop and think about his decision, and he returned to his house and had an emotional breakdown. Chris suffers from manic depression and has been a huge advocate for mental health. He accredits his success to huge help from family, his brothers in the band, Bob Marley, and Jesus Christ. Following his attempted suicide, he told no one about the event, but kept the thought in the back of his head. Nothing in life could make him happy, it seemed, until one day, on the next tour, when his wife Ashley called to tell him that he was going to be a dad. Life switched on a dime for Chris, and he immediately stopped using drugs and tried to get right with the Lord by attending his local church. The band's next album release will be in 2014 with Magic Mountain, recorded at Jayhawk Studios in Pasadena, California, and produced by Evil Joe Baresi. The album would receive generally good reviews from critics and fans, but has very few of the band's hit songs outside of Me and Mary Jane and Hollywood in Kentucky. During the touring cycle for this album, the band would record their first live DVD titled Thank You, Livin' Life, which would be released the following year. During a brief hiatus from touring, the band released that they had been let go from Roadrunner Records in 2015. They would sign to the Mascot label group later that year, under the stipulation that the band would get full creative freedom. On April 1st, 2016, the band's fifth studio album, Kentucky, was released. This was their first self-produced album since Rock and Roll Tape. Kentucky was recorded at the Barrick Recording Studio, once again by David Barrick. This would prove to be the band's second consecutive #1 on the Billboard Hard Rock chart. The album would feature popular songs such as Cheaper to Drink Alone and Soul Machine, and had a picture of the famous Practice House as cover art. In 2016, Black Stone Cherry would headline the Ramblin' Man Festival in the UK for the first time. Ramblin' Man Festival is a huge southern rock and blues festival held every summer in Maidstone, England, and features legendary acts like the Allman Brothers and Government Mule. The following summer, the band would release the first of 2 blues EPs titled Black to Blues. Black Stone Cherry was founded on the blues and had studied the greats all throughout their childhood. The band's 2 most recent albums, Family Tree and The Human Condition, have both been widely accepted by fans of the band and called some of the best music the band has released since its debut. Although the albums differ heavily in style, they both are undeniably Black Stone Cherry. Family Tree being a huge party from start to finish, with upbeat lyrics and fun music videos, and The Human Condition being a heavy storytelling album based on real-life issues and spreading positivity. In the late summer of 2020, Black Stone Cherry teamed up with the band Monster Truck to write, record, and produce a song virtually, all while live streaming the entire process. This project came about as the 2 bands had done a live stream virtual chat to pass the time in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The song Love Become Law by the Cherry Truck Band was released on July 9th, 2020, and the proceeds from the song were split between the 2 bands equally and donated to a charity of each of their choosing. Black Stone Cherry has always been a band focused on bringing people together through the universal language that is music. Beneath the heavy riffs and wailing guitar solos are deep lyrics that can touch the soul and heal emotional wounds if you allow them to. As Chris often says, peace, love, and rock and roll. Thanks for watching. I've been Bradley Miller.